More than ever, Trump cast himself as the defender of white America, presenting himself as a warrior against identity politics. The president has increasingly made appeals to the grievances of white supporters, a centerpiece of his re-election campaign. It goes on, it says, after a summer when hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets protesting racial injustice against black Americans, President Trump has made it clear over the last few days, in his view, the country's real race problem is bias against white Americans. And it is. It's true. This is true. We've already showed you how the media lies about the Black Lives Matter narrative. We've showed you all of the stuff that the media is not covering. And I would say that there is a bigger issue of anti-white rhetoric, anti-white attacks, things like this, than there is police brutality against black Americans, because that's based in complete bullshit, and none of the data that exists out there actually backs them up on this. But they talk about racial sensitivity training. This is what they're calling it here. And it says, just days after returning from Kenosha, Wisconsin, where he staunchly backed law enforcement and did not mention the name of Jacob Blake. Good. We did that, by the way. There were plans, I think, coming from Jared Kushner, right? There were some whispers about Jared Kushner planning for Trump's visit there, planning on him to visit Jacob Blake's family and do all of this like pandering. But instead, they went with the correct idea after facing backlash from their supporters. And this was actually in a couple of articles before he went out to do this Kenosha visit. And we saw Trump visit Kenosha. We saw the wreckage in the background. We saw him talking about law and order. This was very optical. It really looked like, it really was resembled, a visit to a disaster area where a hurricane hit, or a wildfire, or a tornado, or something like this. And I think that they did a really good job creating that ad where it showed all the wreckage in the background, and the rhetoric of Trump's speech was really good. Definitely not a good idea to be visiting with sexual offender Jacob Blake. But it goes on. It says on Friday he purged. He says Mr. Trump issued an order on Friday to purge the federal government of racial sensitivity training. So this is what they're calling it here. It says the president then spent much of the weekend tweeting about his action, presenting himself as a warrior against identity politics. This is a sickness that cannot be allowed to continue. He wrote of such programs. Please report any sightings so we can quickly extinguish. He reposted a tweet from a conservative outlet hailing his order. Quote, sorry, liberals, how to be anti-white 101 is permanently canceled. And so they're talking about the Columbia Bugle tweet. And this is it. Here's the Columbia Bugle tweet here. Sorry, liberals, how to be anti-white 101 is permanently canceled. And Trump retweeted this tweet here. But it's not racial sensitivity training that he's going after. This is not Columbia Buticles. Columbia Buticles cuticles. But it's not racial sensitivity that he's going after. It's not racial sensitivity that Christopher F. Rufo was talking about on Tucker Carlson a couple of times. It's not racial sensitivity training that Seattle City Council is undergoing, or the military's premier nuclear research facility, Sandia Labs, or any of these protesters or professors are teaching on college campuses. It's not racial insensitivity training. This is basically what Trump is calling to ban here. This is basically what critical race theory is. Let me play this clip. A lot of you probably remember this clip, but it'll still probably always be funny.
All white people are racist. So I put this up because I really want any white person in the room to know up front that this is what we're dealing with, that it's not going to be this coddling of white tears and what that looks like. We're not going to discuss, maybe some of us have worked it out. No, you're always going to be racist, actually. So even when you're on your path to trying to figure out how to be a better human being, because I believe that white people are born into not being human, like that actually, instead of people of color and black folks being dehumanized, that actually everyone is dehumanized off rip within white supremacy, that y'all are born into a life to not be human, and that's what y'all are taught to do, to be demons. So in this particular way, white people are all racist. So I just want y'all to know that up front.
to be demons. to be demons. Someone says, I didn't know there was a video in chat. Yeah, there's a video. There's a longer video. But this is basically what this is. This meme really sums up critical race theory on college campuses. This meme sums up critical race theory in the public sector. Y'all white folks as demons, pay me. And that's basically what this came down to, where she posted her PayPal account on a whiteboard and told a bunch of old white and probably mostly Jewish people at this seminar how white people are demons and how white people are racist. Also, there just to sum this up, I mean, this is basically what this comes from. So, of course, the mainstream media is not going to be completely honest with what this means. They're going to label it as racism training or, diversity training or racial insensitivity training. I mean, these are the labels that, of course, are going to be applied to what's going on. But really what it comes down to is just telling white people that their whiteness is the root of all evil, that their whiteness is what's causing a lot of this chaos that we see in the streets, that if we don't break down this whiteness, if we don't break down your white culture, which is Western culture, then a lot of people we're never going to be able to create this equitable, anti-racist utopia that we want to create. And one of those places where this occurred was in Seattle, right? We talked about this. Christopher F. Rufo talked about this. Seattle held segregated training sessions on undoing whiteness. Undoing whiteness encouraged staffers to forfeit guaranteed physical safety. And then at Sandia Labs more recently, and this is where, Tucker Carlson had Christopher F. Rufo on again to discuss this. And that segment is what drove President Trump to eventually make this decision and then absolutely just go off on Twitter and retweet Columbia Bugle tweets about anti-white 101 being canceled forever, which I thought was phenomenal. I never thought that Trump would actually retweet something like that, something as explicit as that, anti-white. And this is the rhetoric that we've been attempting to. This is the sort of term that we've been attempting to enter into mainstream conversation for a long time, anti-white, because saying that they're racist against whites isn't as effective because we know the responses to that. But I think anti-white or anti-white racism or anti-white attacks, this sort of rhetoric is very, very effective. And it really gives a lot of people an explanation as to what they knew has been going on for a long time, but of course can't really put it all together. My goal is to eventually become a powerhouse of truth. That is why it is imperative that you check the links in the description below and go to either Patreon and Subscribestar and support us for at least the cost of a cup of coffee a month. We already have writers writing for TheRedElephants.com, but we'd like to bring on more in the near future. By the way, at TheRedElephants.com, you can also find t-shirts, hats, and other products. Check the links in the description below. It helps us out tremendously.